That's the first thing, right? It's getting Mike back on. Okay. Okay, so this is really good. I'm back in here today, guys. And today I want to talk about Moro. I want to talk about this character. Like every single person knows the story of the Buddha, but we never talk about the temptation that he actually faces. And that's what I'm going to talk about Moro because we know the story, right? The Siddhartha Buddha goes and sits under this Bodhi tree, right? This fig tree, this famous fig tree, and he says when he sits down there that he's not done until he gets, he reaches enlightenment. He wants to understand what the world is. So when it comes to talking about what he faces, now we're talking about Mara, who is one of the most psychologically complex figures in all Buddhist tradition. And he's often mistood as just being a demon, but this guy is far more than just a demon by a tremendous mile more than just a demon. And he really represents an interesting ride through psychology if we take a look at what he was really doing and what he represents in the story. Right? He has a development itself that stretches across thousands of years. And what historically and symbolically he represents something extremely deep. He represents obstruction, right? He's a thing that gets in the way of you wanting to fulfill whatever it is, like spiritually. He is spiritually an obstruction for you personally and all of us, right? And he has development over these hundreds of years that we've been talking, thousands of years that we've been talking about this character. And I want to get into his timeline because it's significant in really understanding not only this mythology of the Buddha, but I think some foundational stuff about their belief systems, right? So I'm going to dig right into it because he's evolved from like an early death principle all the way to this symbol of internal resistance. And I'm going to walk you through this progression because it's pretty deep, man. It's pretty really deep, right? Okay. So this starts around 1500 BCE in Proto-Indo-Iranian cultural sphere. This is way before the Buddha himself was formed or emerged. Their culture was already carrying the idea of death as an organized force. So death was not a random chaos. It had structure. It had rules. It had agency way back, like way back. So we're talking about like 3,500 years from right now. They were already developing this idea, and they had this early complex, conceptual framework where death or obstruction could be personified. So this is how they were thinking about the world this long ago, and this came from the deep background from where Māra would later be developed. So this is where he's coming from. So around 1,000 years BCE, in this pre-Buddhist India, in early Vedic language, the root word Māra is linked to killing, it's linked to destruction, and it's linked to death. And at this stage, it's not a fully character yet. It's more of this principle that exists, something that ends life or blocks vitality. That's important. And this is the seed of it, right? Because there's this idea, but there's not a personality that goes along with it yet. Okay. Now, by the 6th century BCE, this is a long time already, 900 years roughly that we're seeing here. This is when the Buddha, the historical Siddhartha Gautama exists, right? The historical life creates the narrative that is an anchor to Māra. Although he's in the backseat the entire time, right? We barely notice that this significant 1,000-year-old force is linked to this story, right? He's like the new guy. Like the Buddha's just got on the scene. And you're already the star of the show, right? And I'm telling you guys that coming into this, you got to remember that Māra is completely undefeated. The Buddha is the first person to ever be able to face his temptations, right? That's why he's so important, because the world changes after this moment. And because the world changes after this moment, we give all the praise to the Buddha. And we don't turn around and look at Māra and say, this guy was on a winning streak of epic proportions. He was whatever number you can figure out an O. He had taken no L's. Every single person that had stepped up to him had fallen to his temptations prior to today, prior to the Buddha. So he's like, what are you guys talking about? How is it I'm not getting top billing in the story when I'm the one who's like 4 billion and 0? That's really how the story starts to shape up, right? So around this time, around 500 BCE, there's the event, between these two gentlemen here, right? The temptation under the tree, and this temptation is like the core. It is a core mythic event for the story of the Buddha. Like this is kind of the scenario here, where this is where, under the tree. This is the scenario that we're talking about, under which he comes to talk to the Buddha, right? To come and say, like, what are you doing? Because he feels him there trying to reach enlightenment. He knows that this is the path. So he has to challenge him there. So the Buddha is under the tree. He takes his vow not to rise until he reaches awakening. That's when Māra appears, right? And Māra appears like smooth criminal, right? There's no violence when he comes around. He's not making threats or anything like that. At first, he sends comfort, right? He's like, yeah, there's comfort here, and then I'm going to send fear, and then I'm going to send doubt, and that's how he goes about it. And in the story, like, we develop three more myths because these are the daughters of Māra that he sends after them, and each one of them represents something like craving and doubt and seduction. They're all different, and they all attack in different ways, and he resists every single one of them. So by this time, this early 5th century BCE, this is strong like canon. In the teachings that are preserved, Māra at this point is codified. He's written into Buddhist oral canon at this point. So he's no longer just death. He has taken on this role as the tempter, the ruler of illusion, and the force that keeps you in this cycle of desire. That's the important thing. If you have to point to a guy that keeps you in this cycle of desire, well, here he is. This is the guy that you can point to right here. He is singularly the one that keeps all of us back. Because I don't know how many Buddhists, I don't know how many people have gotten to enlightenment, right? But it sounds like it's not a lot. And it sounds like this guy is the main reason why it's not a lot. His role expands from the physical death into like spiritually, I'm blocking you. He is your spiritual block to getting to the enlightenment that you want to take. Now, continuing on into the mythology around 300 BCE, he expands, and this is the developing of Buddhist cosmology, and he is identified as the ruler of this desire realm. This elevates him to a whole nother level. He's not just a figure who appears occasionally. He governs an entire domain of existence. This is it. He is the dude at the top of the dude list. He has an entire domain, and this realm is bound to cravings and attachment. And this is why they say you can't have these cravings and attachment, because now he has a structure to what he's doing. He has a formal structure, and this is not just an episode. This guy's not just a special guest, right? He's a reoccurring character at this point. He's somebody you're gonna have to deal with all the time. I'm always there. I'm the ultimate video game boss, right? And most of you guys lose. And I don't care how many quarters you put in here. You keep trying all you want to, you're probably not gonna make it. That's why the Buddha had to show us. That's why it took him to show us the first time. From that, and he knew this was a problem, right? He saw his winning streak was over, and he said, "This is a problem because if I let the Buddha go through, if he beats me, then everyone's going to know that I can be beaten." And that's what happened. A bunch of us realized that we could do it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now, around 200 BCE, then we get formal mythology of the daughters. Like the narrative on the daughters actually develops, right? And goes into full blown myth. And they, again, like I said, represent craving, they represent seduction, and they represent emotional pull. And this adds a layer of psychological depth to what the story, because again, mythologies are evolving stories. And at this point, we're just seeing Māra, right, evolve. Remember, he was just death before. Remember that. When he started off, he was just death. He didn't even have any daughters. So I don't know what he took time off from being a death god and made a family and taught them how to also be in seduction. But that's what goes on. So he changes from being this external threat to now he's a personal threat to you. He's inside your noodle. He's moved into a space that rarely even gods get into. Most gods aren't all in your noodle. They don't know what you crave. That's a significant moment. And when we think about it, when we talk about like Pennywise, that's what makes Pennywise so brutal, so terrifying, is when someone's able to make a psychological link. They're able to go in and access, your memories and your feelings. They know what makes you happy. They know what gives you fear. So now we're seeing, really a different type of figure out of Māra, Māra, and these extensions of himself, right? So now we're getting to the early beginnings of like the Common Era, early on, and Buddhism itself is starting to spread around South and Southeast Asia, and his role broadens along with it. And in some traditions, he remains a literal cosmic being, right? And others, he starts to shift towards being more of a metaphor. So he represents this internal delusion rather than an external attack. That's how he is now. Now he's really crossed over. And as some of the earlier texts, the Mahaya philosophical texts develop, he is increasingly internalized. He becomes ego. It's ignorance. He is attachment to self. He is the battle under the tree, becomes symbolic of this inner awakening for all of us. He is inside of you. So he's no longer outside. He's fully psychological by this time. And by 400 Common Era, right, in Buddhist art, he is depicted in murals. His imagery becomes standardized. He's associated with storms, right? He's associated with demonic figures. He is associated with, his elegant daughters, right? So I'll put them on the side here. The elegant daughters. Go to the side now. Okay. So, and of course, heavily associated with the Buddha and the tree now, because he's central to this story. Now, by the 7th century, as Buddhism itself moves into China, Korea, Japan, he adapts again. He becomes more of the tempter figure. His interpretation becomes very philosophical at this point because he's associated with the delusion of the mind. So he is attachment to illusion. He is obstruction to clarity is really what he does. So that awakening comes through developing this clarity. And he is 100% central to blocking that whole idea. Around 1200 CE, you get the Tibetan interpretation. As Tibetan Buddhism, he becomes equated with mental affliction. Now he's slowly been moving into the psychology of humans, and now he's fully integrated as affliction itself. So obstacles are described as projections of the mind, and he becomes no longer, he is less an external demon and more of a manifestation of untrained consciousness. Like, this is a major shift just in how we're seeing one figure. And it's an amazing ride so far, and he's not done. He's not done making his mark, right? We've got thousands of years. We're from 1500 BCE to like the 19th century where we are. And this is where he gets the Western misinterpretation of him. This is when the Western scholars look at him and call him as the Buddhist Satan. He's the Satan of Buddhism. And this comparison really simplifies the archetype. And it kind of narrows him down to this moral evil figure. And I think this misinterpretation it's a nuance that kind of misses the tradition of what he really did. I can understand, because you have the Buddha and you have Christ, who are both met by tempters, them both being central, and maybe there is a bit to that overall feeling. And now he's still being adapted right now. He is seen as addiction to stimulus. It's the endless mental noise, the not quieting your mind, and the fog, right? Scrolling, death scrolling, all that stuff is central to blocking you from being awakened. So in that spirit, he has adapted to temptations. So we have to remember this amazing mythological figure began as a death principle. Then he became the mythic tempter. He expanded as a cosmological ruler and has evolved into a psychological metaphor. He survives in modern language as resistant to transformation. This is not evil. He is an obstacle. And as being an obstacle in Buddhist thought is the final gate before awakening. So as I said in the beginning, he is the video game best. He's the OG big boss in the video game. The final threat. You think you've been through everything, you got to get through this guy, man. And you better have a lot of tokens. Because like I said, outside of the Buddha and a handful of other guys, whatever his record is, and maybe 10 losses, right? 4 billion, 10 losses. It's still a pretty impressive record. But that's a little tidbit about him. Thank you for stopping in. If you enjoy, these short mythological breakdowns during your lunch break, as always, I ask you to hit that like and subscribe.